Good evening, everyone. My name is Christopher Hernke, and today for my ethics class, I will be presenting germline editing and questioning the ethicality of creating the perfect children. Let's first start with a question. Germlines. What are they? A germline is the biological term for a human egg and sperm where the DNA of all of our life is carried. Germline editing carries with it the fear of dystopia of designer children for those that could afford it. It also carries with it the possibility of new discovery in the field of gene editing and just research in general. And moving to the next question, why edit the germline? Why not edit the child's DNA? DNA editing is only good for the present. It really only changes that one generation, while germline editing is a process that, with CRISPR clustered regularly, interspaced short palindromatic repeats, a process that can edit DNA to the letter. We edit not only the next generation, but their children and their children's children. DNA is classified as a somatic mutation. It only lasts one generation. It isn't carried by the germline, while when we edit the germline, it lasts the remainder of the generations, and at least half of the next generation would get the same mutation. And now here's a quote from Jekyll and Hyde, a musical that I quite enjoy listening to. It says that you're playing with fire when you start to play God. To me, as I'm not even too religious, talking about this, it's going over a line that I think a lot of religious folks would think about, is that we're trying to carry through our own DNA and modify the next generation unnaturally, not letting somatic mutations change how we are. And now there is a ban on this germline editing or even genetic engineering in general. This map shows where there's bans in the legislation, guidelines to the ban, ambiguous rules, or just restrictive rules. Now, the white areas are places where there are no legislation, no rules, no bans, no guidelines. So these are the places that you'll probably see the most emerging technology come from. And to continue those bans, in my personal opinion, the bans on genetic engineering are more to keep us, the people, from creating designer children, which is children that we choose every little detail for. And if I think that this technology was available, I don't think that the 1%ers could keep themselves to not make their perfect children, or even clones of themselves in their children. They're protecting us, the middle to lower class, from being left in the dust of designer children, as they could be made smarter than us, they could be made more physically fit than us. These designer children could bring a very dystopian future. And the image I brought in is showing what a lot of kids could be like if designer children were allowed to carry through. This is a quote from Marcy Darnasvosky, the executive director of the Center of Genetics and Society. They oppose the use of human germline modification at all. So that means not to cure genetic illness or genetic anything. But the quote says, "Sometimes I feel like we're not on a slippery slope. We're flying off a cliff." And there are pros and cons to the gene editing process of the germline, what it could do for us, or what it could put against us. The pros are that it could reduce the risk of genetically carried diseases, reducing inherited medical conditions. It could give our children a better chance for success, or give us the better understanding of genetics. It could even increase our lifespan. But I think the cons outweigh the pros because they can cause a even bigger society gap and the termination of excess embryos that don't carry the traits that the parents want. It could damage our gene pool even, and there are multiple uses for the genes every child. It could lead to a loss of individuality, or since only the rich can afford this, make it to where we're seen as less than human by the children that were made to be perfect. But other pre-existing children of these families could be affected by their parents' decision to create their perfect child. And these are the next few traits that can be chosen. They can choose the gender, appearance, intelligence, the disease carrying rate, or even their personality, as we know that is mostly put through by our genes. And how they actually choose these traits is through a process called PGD, or pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, where they use in vitro fertilization, which is the image to the right of the screen, which is showing a sperm being implanted into an egg. They create the embryo and wait until they're at the 8-cell stage, where they remove cells and examine the DNA for the traits that they want, or start CRISPR and modify them to make them what they want. And now, here are the questions that I had to ask. Would it be ethical for us to use this technology? What if it was available to everyone, not just the rich? Would it be ethical to remove autism from our gene pool? And why would you think that? Would it be moral to use this technology, even if the military could create painless soldiers by modifying their proteins? Or what if they created these children and treated the excess as an extra class, lower than the low class that we see today? Would it still be ethical? But these next few slides are me giving my answers to these questions and explaining my reasoning a little bit. Would it be ethical to use this technology? No. In my opinion, the creation of designer children is not ethical, as we take away a lot of what they could choose in life. If we give them a high intelligence, that means that they would be one of those kids in school that knew every answer, or maybe it's not that sort of intelligence. Maybe their artistic intelligence is much higher, and then that means that they chose art. And what if they don't like being art savvy? And what if this technology was available to everyone, not just the rich and famous? In my opinion, still no. We should not have the choice of our children's interests, IQ, or physical status. We should allow them to choose that for themselves. And this question, would it be ethical to remove autism from the gene pool? No. In my opinion, autism is terrible in some cases, leading to children that can be nonverbal or worse. But I don't think we should remove it, especially since a lot of people that do have autism live happy, healthy lives, even if they have the small oddity every now and again. Continuing on, would it be moral to use that technology? The only moral outlook that I can get from this is for doing genome surgery for diseases such as cystic fibrosis, Huntington's, or Tay-Sachs. And in the opinion of the painless soldiers, the technology would become immoral for militaristic use. The only way that we could keep it from happening is having strict legal and just repercussions for doing that sort of experimentation on the human genome. We would have to ban it in using it for military purposes, for creating the perfect soldier, such as Steve Rogers, or that was a weird example, but it was a good one because that serum gave him the perfect soldier. He could run longer and basically do anything. So using this sort of technology for that purpose is strictly immoral in my opinion. But the creation of the excess embryos, the ones that don't carry the ones that the parents wanted, what if they created them and kept them, keeping them as a class lower than our own? Designer babies being produced in batches and the extra are usually destroyed. And this whole thing only comes into play if they were not allowed to destroy them, but instead had to find families that would take them in, grow them. And even if they're not wanted, the designer baby industry would bring children into the world that the parents didn't want, creating orphans or even children that were seen as nothing in the eyes of their parents or something. So, in my opinion, that the designer baby industry would not be ethical or moral. Uh, just wanted to thank you all for listening today, and if you have any questions, you can email me or get a hold of me through Canvas. Thank you all for your time.